Hi everybody, my name is Jennifer Lomani and I'm going to talk to you today about the behaviorist. His name is Fred Keller. Okay, so Fred Keller was an American psychologist. He was born in January 2nd of 1899. He was the only child living on a farm near the Rural Grove of New York, and he left school at an early age to work for a Western Union as a telegrapher. His job as a telegrapher, later you'll find out how that really did benefit him and benefit us in the world of behavior and psychology. So in 1918, he did enlist into the Army during the Cold War. For education, Keller graduated from Tufts College in 1926, where he majored in psychology. In 1928, Keller received his Master's of Arts degree from Harvard University. Later, in 1931, Keller was awarded his PhD also from Harvard University. So with his career, Keller worked for Colgate University for 7 years. During that time, he wrote his first book, The Definition of Psychology, and Keller continued to work at Columbia University as an instructor until his retirement in 1964. How did he contribute to psychology? So in 1947, Keller, along with his colleagues, introduced the course lab to go along with the psychology course that he developed at Columbia University. So what that did is that the lab helped reinforce those concepts that was learned in the course. So the purpose of the course was to help students develop an in-depth understanding of behaviors using live rats. Keller also was asked to set up the Department of Psychology in 1963 at the University of Brazil. Keller later developed what we know as the Keller Plan, or the Personalized System of Instruction, also referred to as PSI. PSI could be considered the same as online learning. So how we online learn now, the information is broken down to us by modulars. Each modular has information that us as a student has to learn, and then also at the end of each modular there's some sort of formative assessment that we as students have to show mastery of that topic. So here's a little bit more about Keller being continued. So Keller proposed a reinforcement theory, right? So what that says is that every action usually needs a reinforcement, right? So whether that's a positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement. One continuous reinforcement is money. So as adults, we work, we make money, and we also use that money to pay bills as well as to buy the things that we desire. So Keller did produce textbooks as well as lab manuals that helped to reinforce his teaching topics. Some of his famous works include Principles of Psychology and Goodbye Teacher. Keller was the first to administer Skinner's previous findings into the real-world application. So here's a really fun fact that I was surprised to find out while researching about Fred Keller. The PSI, we can break that down into 4 steps. So step 1 is that the teacher or the educator will need to decide what materials needs to be covered. Step 2 is that the learning materials need to be broken down into segments, what we could also know as modulars. Then we also need to decide what type of formative assessments will be used for students to display their knowledge. For Keller, he indicated that a mastery of the knowledge is a 90% mastery for the students of his courses. And the modulars allow students to move at their own pace. So that's the only difference between the PSI and what we know about online learning now, is that with online learning now, we can't move at our own pace. We have to move at the pace of the class, so that way the class can start and end at its necessary time. Morse code. So Keller was able to transcribe auditory signals of Morse code into English. So using the method called voice code, this helped him earn a certificate of merit by President Truman in 1948. How Keller contributed to literature. Him and his colleagues worked very hard and very diligent developing the PSI, right? And then once it was determined that the materials that needed to be taught, after they were broken down into modulars for the safe-paced learner, Keller was heavily influenced by B.F. Skinner. We know B.F. Skinner because we're using one of his books in our class right now. What made Keller so popular amongst his students is that his books were more easier to read. As we all can see and understand that Skinner's books are very informative, but they can be very difficult to understand and grasp those concepts. So Keller published his second book, which was The Principles of Psychology. He published that in 1950. And throughout his career, he ended up publishing even more books, co-writing books, more lab manuals, and even plenty of articles. I chose some articles for my paper. One of them was The Principles of Psychology. That was the book. And the reason why I chose that one is because with that article, most of Keller's work is really based on the scientific method and how that can be applied to behavior. So we know about the scientific method, and we're learning a little bit more about behavior. So that book linked those two together, and I thought that was very interesting. Another article that I chose was The Behaviorism and the Revolution into Brazil and Back. So with this article, it really focused on generalized reinforcers. So generalized reinforcers, what I mentioned before, was the one example of money, that we work for money and we use the money to buy the things that we like as well as pay bills to survive. Keller also published another article which was called Animals and Children and Child Development. We know that a lot of behavior and a lot of psychology is really based off of animal behavior and off of the development of children. So what this allows us to do is be able to see what types of behaviors we can consider normal and what kind of behaviors we consider not normal in children and in animals. Goodbye Teacher is another beautiful article, and that one touched really dear to my heart because the concept behind Goodbye Teacher is that Keller really wanted to enforce his colleagues and teachers to bring the education back into the hands of the student. Let the student be the main focus of the education. So that way, students are responsible for the education, but us as educators and as leaders, we have to give it back to them. I really appreciated this one because I always advocate that I want to be the change I want to be the change in the classroom that I would like to see for generations to come. So, Keller did die February 2nd of 1996 at the age of 97. He was survived by his wife and 2 children, and Keller's work will leave a lasting impression on psychology for years to come. So I hope that you guys enjoyed my presentation, and enjoy the rest of your day.